Futures trading involves risk and is not suitable for all investors. Content provided in this segment is meant for educational purposes and is not a solicitation to buy or sell commodities.
Hello and welcome to another edition of the Grain Feed, brought to you by EverAg. This is your weekly news feed for all things grain and all things feed. Each week we bring you updates on the markets with unique perspectives from an amazing team of analysts with the intention of helping dairy and livestock producers manage their risk. I'm your host, Jim Matthews, reporting from the Chicago office. Joining me today from New York, dairy broker and agent, Miss Kathleen Wolfley, and from Iowa, grain marketing advisor, Ms. Kristin Stien. Team, how are we today?
We're joyful and chipper, right, Kathleen?
When you're wearing an elf hat, nothing can be bad.
You both look very fantastic. I mean, you've got the Christmas cheer rocking out. I've just Scrooged it over here with my not even up-to-date EverAg logo.
You don't even have a
polo.
green face to hit your description of the Grinch. Come on, Jimbo.
Yeah, face goes from white to red, and that's pretty much the range there. But
ho.
yeah. Oh, sad. What's happening out in Iowa, Kristin? Any festivities getting ready? Have you gotten everybody their gifts? How about like teachers and daycare folks? What about those guys?
Yeah, the gifts are wrapped. Or excuse me, the gifts are bought, not wrapped. So if you have any little elves you want to send my way from Illinois, just, put them on a little reindeer and head them my way, please.
Kathleen, what about you? What's happening with the daycare teachers out there?
Well, after this podcast or after this recording, that's next on the list. How about that?
Well, we're looking forward to a wonderful show here today, folks, and we've got a lot to run through. So, Paige, if you would kindly timestamp the broadcast, it is Thursday morning. It's about 10:20 or so Chicago time, and we're about to head into a 3-day weekend here, and we all know that it's the greatest weekend ever because Christmas is coming, but we got to focus on what's happening with these markets. So right now, we do have the corn market trading just a touch higher this morning. We have March futures up 3 cents. That's after testing and pushing through what were the recent contract lows this week. So we're keeping a sharp eye on just how low corn wants to go. We do have March beans down about 10 cents. Bears have really started to catch hold of the soybean market here in recent sessions alongside of the soybean meal market. That stubborn little byproduct has been on a wonderful free fall. If you are a dairy farmer and livestock producer hoping to feed this protein, we're very happy to see that March meal contract now under $3.90 this morning. So the screens still remain red for the soybean meal contract. So we'll keep an eye on that protein here, and we'll touch on that later today. But for now, Kathleen, we need to talk about some milk. And you were the wonderful host of Parlor to Plate yesterday, crushed it as always, weren't rocking that phenomenal hat, but I still thought you did a great job. And we had a lot of great insights from our colleagues, Zach and John, on the milk markets. What is up with the milk markets lately, Kathleen?
That's a great question, Jim. We have seen a little bit of a relaxation in dairy markets, particularly on the class 3 side over the course of the last, let's say, week or so. Spot, block, and barrel prices are down below $1.45 on blocks, down below $1.40 on the barrel market. That weakness seems to be spilling over into the class 3 marketplace as well. In general, I think that we're in this position today where there's a relatively delicate balance between supply and demand. On the supply side, we've seen the 5th consecutive month of declining milk production here in the U.S., with the November milk production report showing output down 0.6% year over year. Cow numbers continuing to slip as well. But on the flip side, demand has not been all that robust, particularly from a domestic perspective. We've been looking at quick service restaurants that haven't been performing all that well. Retail sales have been a little choppy depending on, are there good promotions that are rolling out or not? The holiday season seems to be performing okay, but I think that there is still some concerns as we go forward into 2024 around, is there enough demand in the marketplace to support where current supply is sitting? And at this point right now, it's almost a blessing in disguise that we've seen a little bit of slippage in overall milk production, because it has help to match up with the weakness in demand. The other thing that we're watching very closely is the export market. Exports have struggled to some extent here over the course of the last several months. And as we go forward into 2024, just have to wonder, particularly from a cheese perspective, are we setting ourselves up for a hot and cold type export market once again, as the U.S. has continued to struggle to compete with some of our key competitors?
I think it's something that we are watching closely as well on the grain and feed side, Kathleen. We talked about this a little bit on our Parlor to Plate podcast yesterday, of that demand aspect. Hot and cold, I think, is a great way to describe it, because we've been very cold on the grain side from a Chinese purchasing perspective, just looking at corn in particular. But suddenly things got hot for the wheat market, and the Chinese stepped in and grabbed 1 million tons of U.S. wheat. We rally $1 a bushel. And then things like, things have kind of cooled off again a little bit. So I think that hot and cold analysis is spot on, because when it gets cold, you start to get complacent. You start to maybe not worry about managing risk as much. There's not as much to talk about, but things can happen real quick, and that market can get hot real fast. Kathleen, as we move into 2024, we've been talking about these markets, trying to push into the end of the year and what to look for next year. Just the way the milk price has been trading and the way interest rates have stayed high, but maybe hopefully coming off. I'd say there is a bit of a more sour mood, maybe in terms of how things look on the dairy because of pricing, but we've got the corn market coming down. Thankfully, protein market is finally coming down a little bit. Perhaps energy costs, maybe we have a lid on those for the time being, depending on the type of winter we're going to have. Any uplifting foresight into the dairy market as we push into the new year?
The most uplifting thing in the dairy markets is this discussion around supply, that we just don't have a ton of excess around. And if we see a big turnaround in demand, which it does seem like from a just general U.S. macro perspective, maybe we're starting to see some of the sands shift around consumer sentiment. Fuel prices are a little lower. I'm still generally concerned about the health of your everyday consumer. Just generally, we're seeing a little bit of light at the end of the tunnel. So if we do start to see the U.S. consumer buying a little bit more product, if we see the export demand pick up to some extent, particularly if Europe is not producing as much milk and is not as much of a pressure or a competitor into the international market, we could see this market turn around. But like I said before, I think it is going to be a delicate balance between supply and demand, that is.
Okay. Thank you very much, Kathleen. And when we turn to the grain side of things, when we took maybe a look at corn versus beans, similar issue with beans, right? The supply has come down notably over the past couple of years on soybeans, whereas supply is quite high at this point. Talking here in the U.S. for corn. So if there's no real demand pickup, we're going to be concerned about a row crop producer that Kristin represents. Where is the support level here on the corn side? What brings us back up for the corn farmer? From the dairy farmer, of course, we're happy to see this continued drag lower, staying below $5. But Kristin, as we kind of move into the new year for the row crop farmer, opportunities here to the upside, what does ultimately kick us out of this longer term bear rut?
Great question. Jimbo, I thought you were the expert when it came to that. No, I'm just kidding. So really, when we look at that, this time of the year is typically a doom and gloom time of the year for corn in particular, for the grain producer, right? Really, the only stories that you have going on is demand, because the supplies got that nail in the coffin already, right? We already have a pretty good idea as to what that looks like. Now, the January report could change that, but some would argue that even if they brought it down a good 7 bushels, it's probably still not enough. We need demand to pick back up. To your point earlier, you said we had a little bit of that light at the end of the tunnel when China started making purchases of wheat, right? Does that start to bring up other portions of that? But that then starts to go back to that delicate balance like Kathleen was speaking of, right? That supply and demand. Anything above that $5 cash number, the buyer of corn just flat out isn't interested in that. right? Mainly because of what that balance sheet looks like. Why would I buy over $5 corn versus the producers sitting there and saying, please, I need $5 corn? Like, and it seems like the minute anytime cash can get there, the producer is like sold. We're good. The auction gavel's being hit from there. So
yeah, and as you noted before we started the recording, Kristin, I mean, a lot of folks' cost of production are also near this level as well. So to have that cash price, and again, we're looking at futures at, let's say, 475 round numbers. So adding basis, if you can get a cash price closer to $5, and that does exceed your cost of production for folks in the Midwest, then yeah, you might get a bit more, aggressive in sales. I think it's notable that from the export market, right, in terms of that light, at the end of the tunnel for some of our row crop farmers, is that we have now come down into a fairly competitive price on the export side of things. We're at a discount to our friends in Brazil. We're at a discount to our friends in Argentina. I think wheat was kind of in the same position of, suddenly wheat pricing from the U.S. became very attractive. We're trading at 2.5 to 3 year lows, depending on the delivery period. And the dollar had come off a bit, maybe not enough to satisfy foreign purchasers, but there was a moment there where the Chinese said, hey, we need some wheat. That looks good, million tons. And perhaps there's something that's going to happen there for the corn market as well. We can't predict that, of course. And that goes back to the hot and cold commentary from Kathleen, but perhaps we get attractive enough for a foreign buyer and they do step in. And I think it's important to keep some of the issues in Brazil in the back of our minds as we push through the winter here, because like you said, Kristin, this time of year can be doom and gloom because that's just seasonally how it works. I mean, we harvest our grain up here. It's all out there. You have supply for the most part exceeding demand this time of year. But if you go back to a seasonal chart, this is kind of when we start to bottom out and maybe tick our way back up through the winter and keep an eye on things from a demand perspective. Anything on the soybean side of the market that you'd like to touch on?
So to your point, right, South America is the big changer, especially when it comes to the soybean market, right? This time of the year actually can be kind of exciting when it comes to beans because this is the key growing period for them. So with this, well, parts of South America are too wet, parts of South America are too cold. With this volatility that's going on, we're seeing that in the soybean market, right? They get a good policy change and all of a sudden beans are down, or they get a good weather forecast of rain, right? Future forecast, all of a sudden beans are down. The hope is for the grain producer that this $13 maintains support on the nearby and really going into next year, hopefully $12.50 maintains support. That's their hope, right? When we're looking at that corn to bean ratio and what that could mean for a flip of acres going into next year, beans really do need to stay elevated that way to get the acres to supply the demand that is there. That's the good news on beans, at least for the producer, that is.
Right, yeah. Even the dairy producer that ultimately has to buy the bean byproduct of meal, you would hope that that this plays into both folks' hands, where bean demand remains strong from a crush perspective.
For the oil.
Exactly right. So because of the way the industry is now being built out, we continue to expand capacity to buy beans, crush for oil, blend that oil into renewable diesel. One would hope that brings an excess of soybean meal, right, to benefit then the meal buyer who is the dairy and livestock producer. So this could play into the hands of both the soybean grower and the meal buyer. Time will tell. Like you said, I think $13 is crucial here for nearby beans, but we've seen meal finally come off a very significant chunk. So hopefully good news on both sides of the soy complex there. So lots of awesome insights from the two of you. We're also just going to kind of tap into some additional knowledge here, specifically on what we know about Christmas with some Christmas trivia. It's Christmas trivia time. We're talking about seasonality. It's that time of year. It's Christmas trivia time. We're going to turn it to Kristin.
Oh, okay. You know how I do with trivia.
Right, well, and you can use a phone a friend. Kathleen can step in, but we're just going to name Santa's reindeer.
I mean, Rudolph's number one, so now it's Kathleen's turn.
One would think, Rudolph leading the way, depending on how foggy the evening is.
That means moisture in the air. I'm excited for that. Let's bring it on.
Right. That's a good way to look at it.
So we got
one.
Dancer, Prancer, Kathleen.
Yeah.
On Comet, on Cupid, on Donner, on Blitzen. Right?
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah.
Yep.
Keep going.
Isn't there Vixen in there?
Vixen's in there.
How many are there?
There's 8.
Rudolph, obviously. Like
There's
You
8
had
plus
to hit
Rudolph.
like 12,
Dasher,
right?
Dasher,
Dancer,
Prancer.
Prancer, Uncommon.
Yeah.
Cupid.
I think-
Comet.
Did you say Cupid?
Donner, Blitzen.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
somewhere in this, like,
But what do you recall?
right,
Jimbo.
somewhere in this, like,
The most famous reindeer of all.
I do think you hit all
Yes.
of them between
Yeah.
the two of you. You hit Dasher, Dancer, Prancer, Vixen, Comet, Cupid, Donner, Blitzen, with Rudolph leading the pack. I think you guys got it. We're
So,
going to give it to you.
Which reindeer are you sending over with your elf to help me wrap presents? Which one is the fastest?
Dancer.
That's good. I could use some
Yeah.
dance moves too. So.
Dancer and I get along just because, we're both natural dancers.
Yeah, I can see it.
Obviously.
Well, right. I didn't think I needed to say it, but just in case
But you
it's your
kinda
first
did.
time viewing,
Yeah.
the show. For the 12
That was
days of
great.
Christmas, we're not gonna go through all 12 days of Christmas, but the dairy focused episode. How many maids of milking were gifted to the 12 days? Yes, 8 maids of milking. Excellent. How about Frosty the Snowman? What was his nose made of?
It's a carrot.
Button nose.
Yes, a button nose. That's a tricky one, Kathleen, because
I had
you
to sing
think,
the
It's
song.
a tricky one.
yeah, when I make a snowman, I use a carrot. I don't use a button, but Frosty.
I
Gotta be
use
careful.
Oreos, and then my dog comes out and eats them.
Well, yes, so I
Yeah.
would go out and eat them as well.
Because I would say, why would you waste an
Handing out
Oreo on a
Oreos.
snowman?
We're out of carrots and buttons.
What were Frosty's eyes truly made of? What were Frosty's eyes made of? They were not Oreos.
Isn't that coal?
Yes, 2 eyes made out of coal. That's right, exactly. Well done. Well, I think you saved yourself after the carrot. Kath,
Yeah.
You came in firing on the coal. Well done. Just a couple more. We have Bing Crosby dreamed of a white Christmas, but what kind of Christmas did Elvis end up having?
Blue Christmas.
Yeah, very nice. Excellent. A blue Christmas. Very nice. In Home Alone, shout out to Chicagoland. In Home Alone, Kevin McAllister's family left him behind on their way to which city? Where were they ultimately flying to when they were on the plane and
Number
realized?
1, 2. Which one are you talking about? Number
One.
To Paris.
It wasn't it Paris?
Yes. Wow.
Yeah.
Excellent work.
So,
Fantastic.
I got a better question for you, Jimbo.
Oh my.
Which movie of Home Alone's, which number is the quote come from of what kind of idiots do we have working here?
2?
Number 2.
Yeah.
In
Nice.
the city of
Beautiful.
New York. That one came from my
Yeah.
daughter, Elsie.
Yeah. That's also what Pete says when he walks into the office and
Yeah.
sees me sitting at the desk.
It's what,
That's
yep.
what happens as well.
That's what Elsie says when she's picking up toys.
Beautiful. All right, we got 2 more. So in It's a Wonderful Life, what happens every time a bell rings?
An angel gets its wings.
Wow, and that was in harmony. That was
It's the classic.
beautiful. 2 angels themselves right here.
Yeah. Why we
and
know.
in the movie Elf, what's the best way to spread Christmas cheer?
By singing
songs.
loud for all to
Yeah,
hear.
singing loud songs.
Yes. And singing loudly, of course, the only way I know how to sing. So lots of Christmas cheer this year. And thank you both for being here and all of your awesome insights, obviously on the markets, but your Christmas insights are amazing. Spot on. Thanks for joining us in the trivia and being here on the show. Excellent work. We'd, of course, like to thank the Everac Insights crew for their support, and thank you to Paige for her production magic. Thank you to the viewers for watching the Green Feed, and wish everyone out there a very, very, very Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. Everyone take a moment to remember what this awesome holiday is really all about. Let's remain grateful, humble as we head into 2024. Reach out to someone this Christmas in need of a good old-fashioned season's greetings, because everyone needs a little bit of Christmas cheer in some form or another for one reason or another. So Merry Christmas to you all. Contact information is on the screen. We greatly appreciate your feedback. That's all for today. We'll see you next year on the Grain Feed.